So many times I quoted the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo, the Ramban explaining why is it so important to forever remember the Nisim of Yetzias Mitzrayim. מן הניסים הגדולים והמפורסמים עוד המועד בניסים הנסתורים שהם יסוד כל התורה כולו, שאין לנו חלק בתורס מוישה עד שנדע שכל דברינו ומקרינו הם ניסים, אין בהם טבע ומנהגי של עולם. So the Ramban says, why is it important to remember those miraculous, supernatural, amazing events of Aseres HaMakas and Yetzias Mitzrayim? Because miracles of that nature will not happen many times. That was Yetzias Mitzrayim. And when we will forever remember those miracles, we will appreciate and believe in the miracles of concealment, of the Nisim and Astorim. Life is the greatest miracle of all. Anisecho v'nifloisecho shebachol yoyim imonu, erev uvoiker v'tzohorayim. The Nisim and Astorim, that is what makes us Jews. That is what makes us Anshe Emuno. Knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control. He controls nature and he is above and beyond nature. Ve'ein oid milvadoi. So I mentioned this many, many times. There was one Tana in Tkufas HaMishnah who was the Rebbe, the Admor in the days of the Mishnah. I don't want to say he was the Baba, because a Baba has a somewhat negative connotation to many. But I'm talking about Reb Chanina ben Dosa. We don't have even one halacha that Reb Chanina ben Dosa taught us. Nowhere in the Mishnah, in Tosefta, in Gemara, is there one mamar halacha from Reb Chanina ben Dosa. All we know about him is Nisim v'Neflois, and there was always a long line waiting outside his door for kvitlach. You know what kvitlach is? Even a Litvak today knows what a kvitlach is. Even to me, some people bring kvitlach, and I don't know why. And there was always a long line, because you got an immediate response. And he says in Bruchas Lamed Im tfilos shgura b'fi yodei anishim miskabeles. And you asked for a brocha, and you got it on the spot. So all we know about Reb Chanina ben Dosa is various different stories about Moifsim, Nisim v'Neflois. One of the stories is the end of Masechet Tanis. And I'll explain why I quote this story. Shabbos afternoon, the bells are ringing outside, and the karoz is singing, and his daughter breaks out crying. And the father asks the daughter, why are you crying, Yaldati? And she says, Abba, we don't have Shabbos candles. I tried to light the candles. It's not happening. And I just realized we don't have Hashem, and it's chometz, it's vinegar. We're not going to have any candles. And Reb Chanina ben Dosa smiles and he says, my lovely little girl, we'll have Shabbos candles, don't worry. Misha Omer Hashem and v'yadlek, Yom Elachayim is v'yadlek. I wasn't there, but I could imagine the little girl looks at her father and he says, Abba, you're such a big tzaddik. But I go to Bisyanka, we learned chemia, we learned chemistry. Abba, there's no such a thing, vinegar doesn't burn. Abba, maybe you don't know, but vinegar is not inflammable, it doesn't burn. And Reb Chanina smiles with just such chiyuch shel chemla, and he says, Biti yikara, I'm not as ignorant as you think. I know that vinegar doesn't burn. But why is that? Because that's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to cry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to be happy. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to have Shabbos candles. So I believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say now, at least in the home of Chanina ben Dosa, vinegar would burn. Why not? To HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all the same. So we are no longer in a spoil that Reb Chanina ben Dosa makes a miracle. Miracles were with him every day. What you need to learn is the sprach, the simplicity. He tells his daughter, "Ma ichpas lach." Don't cry. Ma ichpas lach. Does it really make a difference whether it's oil or vinegar. Makes no difference, because to HaKadosh Baruch Hu it's all the same. To HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Nes and Teva are the same, and there is nothing between Nes and Teva, because Teva alone is the greatest Nes. And the one that created Teva, and the one that activates Teva and gives life to Teva is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he tells his daughter, why are you crying? Stop crying. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to cry. If oil could burn, so could vinegar. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, and everything is Ratzayin Hashem, Ratzayin HaPoshet Yisborach Shemoy. And that is why we need to remember the Nisim of Yetzias Mitzrayim, to appreciate the everyday Nisim. And that's what Purim is all about. Purim is the only Nes which was 100% natural phenomena. Nothing beyond the realm of nature. Yetzias Mitzrayim was all supernatural from beginning to end. Nothing was natural. Chanukah, Rabim Biyad Me'atim. Geborim biyad chaloshim, but we still had the Nes of Pachas Shemen, which was miraculous. Purim, everything was natural, but you needed to be blind, and you needed to be a koifa be'ikah not to see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control. So the Ramah brings a minhag. Tzorech lifrois es ha-Megillah ke'igeres kedei laharois ha-neis. You don't read the Megillah like a Sefer Torah when it's Beglila. You spread it out. Kedei laharois ha-neis. How exactly do we show the neis by spreading out the Megillah? Maybe what the Ramah means, kedei laharois ha-Megillah. Everybody should see the Megillah. It's spread out. It's big. But that's not what the Ramah writes. Kedei laharois ha-neis. And I say, when you read the Megillah, one year at a time, there's nothing outstanding in the Megillah. It's a story. But if you read the Megillah, Beskira Achas, and you see this amazing, unbelievable chain of events, and everything that seemed to spell tragedy for the Jews, that was part of the salvation. That was part of the Yeshua. So I say, if it would be possible, Chazal would be metaken that we need to read the Megillah Benashim Achas, but we barely make it to Vaizoso, Benashim Achas. So we can't. If it would be possible, that would be the way to read the Megillah. We spread out the Megillah. Look at this story. Look at the sequence. Look how every event turned out to be Memaka Atzma HaKadosh Baruch Hu Metaken Ritiyah, and Magdim Refuah Lamaka, and that is Soif HaNisim. And Purim teaches us the Nisim HaNistorim. And that is what the Megillah is all about. The Nisim HaNistorim. And that is why Chazal say, V'zicham leYosef mezaram. Kol hamoyedim hasidim leyibotel. And why is that? Because the other Yom Tovim that prove that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could make Nisim won't be relevant, Liosed Lavoi. Everything will be miraculous. People will live forever. Olam HaNeshamis, there will be no need to tell us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes miracles. Our existence would be miraculous. But it still would be important looking back at Goddess and understanding everything we've been through. Derech HaTeva was one huge nes. And all the tzoros we endured were Rachamei Shamayim. And that will be important even La'ased Lavoi. And that is why Megillah will stay with us. Purim will stay with us. Because Purim we saw that everything that seemed to be tragic, at the end of the day, it all was part of Yeshua's Hashem. Haman was so happy when his advisors told him that Chodesh Adar is a terrible month. Moshe Rabbeinu died in Chodesh Adar. Little did they know that that's our greatest month. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Adar, v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamarash noseim shel tzadikim miyoyim liyoyim. We could imagine how the Jewish community felt when out of the thousands of women and girls, and each and every one of them tried to be so appealing to Achashverosh, and there was one tzedekah that grew up in the house of the Gadol Ador B'Kedusha V'Tahara, and she asked for nothing She wanted to be as unappealing to Achashverosh as barely possible, and that crazy king out of all the thousands chose Esther. How tragic. How broken the Jewish community was. And then when they went out every morning in the street and they saw that skyscraper, Eitz Gavoya Chamisha Mamo, and everybody knew what that means. And in those days it was a skyscraper, and you saw it from every place in town, and the Jews couldn't believe their eyes. They looked down at the floor. Venahafoichu. And every stage that seemed to spell tragedy for Klal Yisrael was transformed, and they all became part of Yeshua's Hashem. And that is the message of Purim. The message that everything is Nissim and everything is Rachamei Shamayim. And that is what Purim is all about. And that is why Zichrom lo Yosef Lazarim. So there are more paskins. If you forgot to say Al Nissim Ebech Zamozan, you say Hurachamon. Hurachamon Hu Yasalon Nissim Erhos Keshem Shal Sisal Avaseinu. So today we finish our Shiur by saying Hurachamon Hu Yasalonu Nissim Erhos Keshem Shal Sisal Avaseinu B'Yom Ubezman Hazeh. We should once again see Nissim V'Naflois and Rachamei Shamayim Be Yeshua Hashem Ke'erafayin Be'Bias Goel Tzedek B'Mheiro V'Yomeinu Omein.